What's up with it, people? I am on the New York server this time. I don't know if I will ever get an end to this, or if this is just now how I have to do my stream, but I have to, like, every time I want to stream, I have to do Twitch tests to see which server is not going to make me have, like, a massive dip in stream quality every so often, right? Like, I have the dynamic bitrate enabled, so I'm not going to be dropping any frames, but, that doesn't guarantee that the bitrate is always going to stay at 6,000. It might dip. But anyways, today that server is New York. Last time I think it was Miami or something. But we'll see how it goes. And today's supposed to, or should be, a more chill live stream. I'm not too worried about video segments right now because I make it a habit not to do any video editing stuff on the weekends. And then like I said, oh, right, wrong one. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I said I was gonna do like kind of a one per week schedule of making videos, which I think I'll keep that sort of track because I have other things going on too. Uh, anyways, you also might be able to see my cat on the bed behind me. She's chilling there. So the room to my door is open a little bit so she can come and go as she pleases. But today, just because it's a chill stream, does not mean that there won't be anything of political import to talk about. There will be. I just won't be making segments out of it, most likely. Again, because I wanted to pace myself with respect to video segment uploads and things of that nature. In fact, there are three, count them, three, 1, 2, 3 things that I have explicitly written down on my list, and then some stuff that's been floating around in my brain since I've been reading and watching some of the shows that I like, that sort of thing. I don't think there's been an update since the last time. If I go to ZPL. Nope. Okay. Last post is from October 7th, which was the hotfix for battle mode. Cool. Ah, my apologies. One of the consequences of the cooler weather is that I am going to be yawning a lot more. Especially considering like seasonal depression and all that, there's going to be a very real tendency to sort of slow down during the fall and winter season. Retro WFC. Let's see, what do you got for me, huh? There we go. Retro Worldwide, please. Thank you very much. Who do I want to be racing as today? You know what? Maybe I'll do a rotation of characters. There we go. Wow, that was, but they got it close, huh? Dio. Kono dio da? Say it ain't so? Question mark? Okay. Let me see if I can find a story for the first thing. Ah, yes, Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera English is actually pretty good as far as mainstream news sources go. Be aware that the bias for Al Jazeera is much easier to read through than the bias for a lot of other outlets. They have a bias against Israel, which, I mean, if you're doing common sense journalism, you probably should have that bias because Israel fucking hates journalists and is also an apartheid state, etc., etc. Being self-aware of that is not too difficult of a feat. And then also, they are a Qatari state media outlet, so if they are reporting on any of the Gulf states, especially Qatar, they are likely to portray them in a much more favorable light than any other news outlet. You know, usually with stuff like the Gulf states, you want to assume the least charitable possible interpretation. But most of the reporting is really good stuff. So here we have Israeli forces again target. Okay, this isn't even the first time they've done this. Again, target UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon. This has been in my news cycle for the past few days. In fact, since last week, I believe it had already started happening at the time of recording the Hurricane Milton segment, or potentially shortly thereafter, which was that the just as this news headline says, as part of the Israeli invasion into southern Lebanon, they have started to target UN peacekeepers, as you know, as I refer to them in the title of the stream, the blue helmets. Whenever you hear somebody say blue helmets, they mean UN peacekeepers. That was a good idea for a trap, but it didn't work. And I'm dead. So, the attack on, let's see, UNIFIL headquarters in Nakura comes a day after something else. Day after two Indonesian peacekeepers were injured, and I believe that's by an Israeli drone strike or bombing campaign or something like that. Send these red shells on their way. Oh. Sorry, I gotta concentrate a little bit on driving here. And so much for that. I posted cringe. I'm going to lose subscriber. UNIFIL is the UN in fucking inner something. Interim force in Lebanon. Okay, thank you, Al Jazeera. Very cool. Yeah, UN peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon confirms its headquarters in Nakura was hit by explosions for the second time in 48 hours, a day after Israeli forces struck the same position. So Israel now is not only targeting civilian infrastructure, but is directly targeting humanitarian international campaigns, such as, well, UN peacekeeping missions, which, you know, there are some controversies about the abuses committed by UN forces. Refer to the various crises in Haiti for that, but ultimately that is peanuts next to what Israel is doing here. The UN being a relatively well-intentioned group or collection of groups that has several missteps. And Israel being so openly bloodthirsty that they will bomb you on purpose if you're bringing food to people who are ethnically Arab. Such is the case here with UNIFIL. Such was the case also with the World Central Kitchen, who were Americans, which shows, I think, the lack of restraint that Israel is willing to engage in, because they know that the United States will back them up no matter what they do. You know, typical of a rogue state, I suppose. You know, as such, this is more in the vein of very rogue state kind of behavior. This is another one of those broken record moments, but the only way that this changes is if the U.S. decides that it's going to change. You know, the U.S. is the biggest source of leverage over Israel, and we've also been the primary obstacle to accountability for Israel because of a very, if I'm being honest, a very ideological disposition to Zionism on the part of the U.S. President Joe Biden, and a very antiquated set of assumptions about the geopolitical benefits that Israel could theoretically offer to the United States, resulting in not only the ideological Zionism of Joe Biden, but also a Zionism of convenience for many others in the Democratic Party and the United States government more broadly, including but not limited to the Republicans, who are absolutely frothing at the mouth insane to such a degree that they are, you know, willing to support candidates like Mark Robinson, who hate the Jews but love Israel. And that's, you know, I think that's sort of typically representative of American politics, but that, like, that is also the thing that needs to change, you know? Politicians in the United States need to be shown that they will receive public backlash for being Zionist, even if it is only a Zionism of convenience, where the argumentation is just that Israel is an ally of the United States. That's not good enough. You know who else was an ally of the United States? The Khmer Rouge. You know what the Khmer Rouge did? Well, it'd be shorter to you know, it'd be easier to give you a list of what they didn't do. And what they didn't do was a whole lot of humanitarianism, you know. They didn't do that, but they were known for doing all sorts of other shit. The Khmer Rouge, however, was geopolitically beneficial to the United States. That's a leg that they have up on Israel. Israel is all of the drawbacks with none of the positives of the Khmer Rouge. I can't believe I'm saying that. But, you know, that it is what it is. Does nobody know about this? I wonder. This is way faster. Guess people don't know you can hop that little patch of grass there. Watch. Look, I'll do it right here. Look. Oh wait, he did it. Okay, so this guy knows about it. I'm gonna save this mushroom for the shortcut that's coming up here. There we go. And this guy has a banana, so I'm gonna let him have first. Cool. Any deliberate attack on peacekeepers is a grave violation of international humanitarian law. Yeah. One of the injured peacekeepers was taken to a hospital in the nearby city of Tyre. Tyre, by the way, one of the oldest cities in the world. Tyre is something like 4,000 or 5,000 years old. And now it is because it's in Lebanon and Israel's invading Lebanon, it is in danger of being absolutely fucking murked and wiped off the face of the earth. One of the oldest settlements known to mankind, a massive historical trove of information and records on just all things of import to historians. Anything that would be interesting to understanding how human societies of old have worked and the kind of systems that came before. You know, Israel doesn't care though because it's in the hands of an Arab state, or majority Arab state, I should say. But yeah, that's the city where somebody had to be taken to the hospital. And as you could expect, this is only escalating tensions. Israel, by doing this, has only escalated tensions between itself and the UN, and Lebanon as well. You know, predictably so. Lebanon being the state that's being invaded right now. It's funny, you know, the Israeli government is kind of engaging in similar rhetoric to the Russian government when the Ukraine invasion started. You know, where Russia was saying, oh, this is like a special military operation, but they didn't really want to call it an outright invasion or war because that would earn them a lot of side-eye in the international community and stuff like that. And then, of course, like over time, they just acknowledge, like, yeah, okay, it is what it is, right? Why? Bro, you realize that only got me a better item. Yeah, serve you fucking right. What? That's crazy. Those trucks have way bigger hitboxes than I think they do. Did that used to be a flip trick ramp? I swear it didn't used to be that. But I could be wrong. I know where I want to use this, but somebody might have the shock. It's possible. That would be unfortunate for me if they did. I'm going to start using it here. Ah, there's the shock. What? I was willing for like half a second. How did I get wheelie bumped there? Jesus. Alright, I'm going to keep going as Mario. I kind of want to just go positive with every character. And so far as Mario, I have not done that. Yeah, attack on Thursday prompted global condemnation. I ain't gonna lie, war kind of seems inevitable. Israel is willing to even go as far as attacking UN forces because they know that the United States is going to back them up here. I realistically, I don't think there's any reality where the Israeli state doesn't like look at this and think, oh, well, we can just escalate to a full scale war because the US will back us up. They've been posturing this way for some time. Every strike, every escalation that happens, it becomes more and more of a set in stone kind of fact in my mind that, like, yeah, a wider regional war in the Middle East is going to break out with Israel and the United States fighting Iran, Hezbollah, Lebanon, like, and basically whoever else Israel decides to bomb on a given day. You and me both, Chaser. See that? Thank you. I tried to bump him a little bit, like bumper car style, but I don't know if it worked. Is that a shortcut? I don't know if that's a shortcut. Okay, there we go. Did that part correctly that time. I thought he was slowing down to let me pass. If that was the case, then I was a little bit too late on my reaction there. Yeah. Usually, there's a social dynamic that I described one time or another in Mario Kart, where if somebody has triple reds or triple greens, like, immediately behind you, more so with triple reds, but also triple greens if they're, like, right next to you, sometimes what'll happen is, like, or sometimes other people will recognize this too. They recognize, like, shit, he's gonna pass whether I like it or not. So that, like, basically people will slow down so that the other person passes, but they don't get hit by the rotating shells. It's kind of like a way to construct a scenario. It's like you try to make the best of that situation so that nobody loses, right? Does that make sense? Oh, only two players. And in that scenario, I'm not sure if that guy, like, had the wherewithal to do that, but it was just too slow, or if it was, like, he just slowed down for some other reason. But usually I like to do that. If somebody behind me has, like, red shells and they're coming up on me, or something like that, I like to just slow down and be like, look, you can take over that position. I'm not going to threaten, because I don't want to get hit. And then if somebody does that for you and you still throw the shell at them, you're a psychopath. Thank you. I might have gotten disconnected from the other players. Yeah, I did. Oh well. Let me, actually, it's getting a little bit warmer, so I'm going to take off my sweatshirt. And my cat left. She probably wanted to sleep when I was talking and being loud and shit. Gives me a little bit of time to collect myself. Okay. 3 people. Alright. So I think I've said all I can about Israel. Least insane rogue state behavior. We will bomb UN peacekeepers and such. Great, thank you. Very cool. Elsewise, the one other, like, major politics thing I saw fit to mention was relating to the campaign trail, as many things are in the month of October. As the general election nears, the Democrats have been employing their tried and true strategy of lose on purpose. Except they might not be able to lose this one because their opponents are better at losing elections. Early on, when Kamala Harris took the reins of the campaign, there was a lot of energy. Kamala Harris had a pretty shining personality. I will openly admit, whatever. And Tim Walz was absolutely killing it rhetorically with the line about Republicans being fucking weird, because it's true, they are. Some of the weirdest people you'll ever see, hear of, or meet in general. And there was a lot of, like, positive energy for that campaign, rightly so. That has started to dwindle, and the reason it has started to dwindle is because of the weird, like, inexplicable almost political trend of sandblasting off all identifiable elements of personality in favor of the sort of center to center right talking points that Democrats refuse to learn lose them elections rather than win them elections. Well, what I mean by that is, when the campaign really got going, there were like 3 things that were incredibly beneficial for the Democrats. Three really, really easy rhetorical lines that were basically undefeatable. Number one, all stuff having to do with abortion, right? Number two, unions. And number three, calling Republicans weirdos for caring so much about people's porn consumption habits, wanting to ban pornography, and wanting to, inspect the junk of children. You know what I mean? It was like a perfect trifecta of like, how do you make the other side look as evil as they are and look as fucking weird as they are too? But they stopped doing that. Why did they stop doing that? There are some people who have hypotheses. There is one hypothesis that I have, or I guess one and a half, and that is that the Democratic consultants are now in Kamala Harris's ear. There's like a mishmash of consultants and I don't know, fucking, I wouldn't even call them intellectuals or academics because they're clearly not very intelligent or well-read in an academic sense. It's just like party insiders. It really is just like incompetent party men advising Kamala Harris to not do anything that could be like interesting ever, and definitely don't say anything that resonates with the American people. Keep it to talking about how you're tough on immigration and tough on crime, because nobody's interested in, say, I don't know, pro-union politics or the issue of abortion or holding Republicans accountable for overtly sabotaging the institutions of democracy. Nah, nobody cares about that. You know what they care about? They care about border policing. Thank you. Great. Glad to know that you would like to lose the election rather than win it. And that's sort of why, that's sort of why Kamala Harris has started to be less charismatic, more demure, more like head down, not making eye contact and shit like that. And why we've seen less of her like charming side. You know, the laugh and the coconut memes, that's all gone. In favor of this like same old neoliberal centrist miasma that was dead on arrival 30 years ago, and that continues to be a dead electoral strategy today. You know? It's really frustrating. It is really, really frustrating. And I've gotten in arguments with liberals on this who supposedly have some sort of left-of-center convictions, but are curiously never willing to criticize the Democrats on not sharing those same convictions. You know, they're always like, yeah, it's not as left as I would like, but this is good strategy. But then they can never really explain why it's actually good strategy, because strategy revolves around convincing people of like your platform and convincing people that you would be a meaningfully different and better candidate, not only than Donald Trump because he's on the other end of the ticket, but also than like Joe Biden, who's president right now. They wouldn't do it if it didn't work. Yes, they fucking would. And I know this because they've done it for 30 years straight and it hasn't worked. Seriously, you can go back and look at the elections that Democrats have won with this strategy. All this strategy serves to do is take the wind out of the sails of their base and their coalition. They're literally like saying, okay, well, we're going to win this election anyway, so let's do something that's actually going to sabotage our chances of getting anything in our platform passed as a policy package in the next 4 years. That way, we'll come back and say the same thing that will do the same thing, which is take the wind out of the sails. The only thing that this strategy accomplishes is giving Republicans more room to win, because it is like buying into hook, line, and sinker the reactionary framing of the discourse and marketing the Democrats as Republican light. This has never worked. It never will work. This is why the Social Democrats and liberals in Germany lost to the Nazis. This is why they were such an ineffectual opposition, because they kept buying into a lot of the conservative propaganda that Nazis would push, and it essentially ended up just arguing we would be better Nazis than the Nazis. They have to have a big tent to grab the refs skeptical of Trump. No, they fucking don't. And you know it. Republicans skeptical of Trump will do one of two things. They will stay home or they will vote for Kamala Harris. Either way, that's a vote that Donald Trump is not getting. There is no, I've said in the past, there is no path to victory for the Republicans that doesn't involve cheating. Women are going to vote in massive numbers. If the Democrats kept focusing on union politics, they're going to capture the votes of the workers in record numbers we haven't seen in decades. Remember, the part of that centrist strategy is abandoning union politics, something that the Clinton Democrats did in the 90s and resulted in a massive, regression of living conditions. The working class got hollowed out for 30 years, which led them to be skeptical of the Democratic Party. Because, the Democrats are the party of small business and lawyers. They don't give a shit about unions. And for a time, that was in part correct. Now, obviously, if you compare that to the Republicans are orders of magnitude worse. But you, as the Democratic Party, if your objective is to win, you have to reclaim that working class base. And you do that by appealing to their own interests with emotional appeals. And the Democrats aren't willing to do that. The big tent that they're trying to construct is a tent already occupied by the Republican Party. It's the fucking ice cream stand shtick. You're pushing so far down the block, you're leaving out everybody who would otherwise be enthusiastic about you. By moving to the right, you're essentially only sowing doubt in the minds of your own base, and in fact the left-leaning contingents that would have otherwise been enthusiastically supportive of you, that you would even be worth the vote in the first place. Does that make sense? This is why also the centrism strategy for Keir Starmer works so poorly. We all saw the results of Keir Starmer doing a centrist electoral strategy in Great Britain, the United Kingdom, when he didn't need to. You know what happened? He won the election in an embarrassingly low margin and then instantly went into the negative approval ratings and did nothing. Partly of his own volition. Somebody in my chat yesterday, Astroflake, said that the Democrats are a fair shot better than the Labour Party and the liberal parties of Europe. And that is true. But if the Democrats keep doing this, if they refuse to move left, if they refuse to acquiesce to the demands of the social democratic and socialist contingents of their voting base, of their coalition of support, if they refuse to focus more on the union politics, on the working class politics, on the policy positions that are massively popular, that Republicans won't even touch to save their lives because, I don't know, would benefit migrants in some way, then their fate will be the same as the Labour Party, and they're just going to lose. In choosing centrism, the Democrats only further doom this country to a future of fascism, is what I'm trying to get at. And look no further for more evidence of this than the fact that Kamala Harris has been taking advice lately from fucking Hillary Clinton, possibly the most hated individual, definitely the most hated woman in all of American politics, which is impressive given that the competition in American politics is Donald Trump for most hated politician. Right? Hillary Clinton, to put it in perspective, she is the only person that lost to Donald Trump. She's the only person to ever run against a candidate as unpopular as Donald Trump and lose. And that is because she was a fucking Democratic insider. She was part of that consultant class. She had all the centrist positions that the Democratic leadership loved. She refused to go hard on the working class politics. She made it about Trump and Trump alone. She made it about the civility, and she did everything wrong in her campaign that would lead to you losing. It's getting me animated because the Democratic Party right now is showing that it has a committed inability to learn from its mistakes in the past. You know, some people could make the argument, if you're really committed to being pro-Democrat here, you could argue that Hillary Clinton is a failure and failure is a great teacher, right? But that rests on the assumption that in order to teach from your failure, you have to understand what made it a failure in the first place. Failure can only be a teacher if you recognize your failings as the failings that they are. The Democratic Party has shown no sign of recognizing our centrist platform, the fucking center talking points about, oh, border security and like fund the police and also we're pro-Israel. Something that they've seen fit to like advertise on the campaign as 60 to 70% of the American population is pro-arms embargo. When that's your campaign strategy, then it's clear that not only are you not willing to learn from your mistakes, but you refuse to acknowledge that the mistakes you made are even missteps in the first place. And that is why the Democratic Party has now a renewed chance of losing this election. My prediction is now changed from the Democratic Party is guaranteed to win as long as the Republicans don't get away with all the election interference, to now there's like a legitimate question in my mind. Are the Democrats going to win the popular vote? Without a doubt. But now there's like there's new doubt being sown that like they might not be able to capture the same base of support that they have relied on in past decades, because a large part of the groups that really deliver for the Democrats are the unions, the union workers, right? That's what all the union endorsements do for them. And when they're not willing to do for the unions, sorry, bud, you lose the election that way. You know? And that even affects, that's even an effect when the Democrats are, you know, maybe behind the scenes, they're committed to union activism and workers' rights and pro-worker policy making, whatever. But like up front, they market themselves as tough on the border, tough on crime, fund the police, would defend our allies in the Middle East, by which they mean Israel mulching Palestinian babies, right? It doesn't matter what you do behind the scenes on the campaign trail if up front you're advertising all the worst components of yourself and refusing to acknowledge that those are flaws in your character, right? And this is all at the encouragement of Democratic consultants whose job has been go out there and lose elections for 30 years straight. That's the only reason that the Republican Party is still relevant, because of the incompetence of liberals. When I mention liberals being incompetent, this is the incompetence partly of which I speak. You know, if you take a look at a social democratic platform, which is, you know, social democracy is a form of liberalism, there's some compelling shit in there. But the Democrats never market that. They never highlight that. They never say, we're going to bring wages back up. We're going to try to get rent prices down. We're going to hold the big landlords accountable for the price gouging they've engaged in. They'll refer to price gouging, but always in such a nebulous concept that it becomes as meaningless as gas prices. I swear, it's like they're allergic to good strategy. You know? I've seen like on the ground news interviews with people in a lot of areas who are like if not uncommitted. Uncommitted is you know, like the movement, the pro-Palestine movement. The fucking like undecided or like median voter types, who are of course stupid as fuck. Don't get me wrong here. Like I'm not arguing in favor of the intelligence of the American voter, but even the dumbest American is in a certain degree aware of their own self-interests, that like you know, people know that this is a game of lesser evils, and in the case of the Democrats, they're doing a terrible job of making themselves out to be the lesser evil because they're trying to make themselves look just as evil as the Republicans. You know? As weird as it sounds, the Democrats almost might even do well to just like reintroduce queer rights and gay rights back into the discourse, because that's one of the issues where like everybody is more or less in line with the left of center party on this. Like that's one of the things that resonates with people, is that there's still a lot of anti-queer discrimination in the workplace. There are some places where you can legally still be discriminated against for being of a certain orientation or whatever. And the Democrats are actively backing away from that. You can look at some of the campaign material that they're running down in Texas. They effectively lost themselves that whole election by just unforced marketing that, like, hey, our guy, he's anti-trans. How about that, Texas? Like, fucking what? The average American is pro-trans. I swear, look, I have frequently said that, like, oh, I'm not an expert on this or this other thing. Fuck it. I'm a campaign expert, all right? You put me next to any Democratic consultant, I'm winning by double-digit margins in a national election. Fuck them. Fuck those guys. And fuck the Democratic Party, too. Jesus Christ. Never, like... I mean, I would say never in any other country, but, like, obviously the UK and Canada both exist. Like, it is genuinely so rare for the unambiguously preferable party to be so successful at making themselves look weak and unappealing. Also, Real Cryoraptor, welcome to chat, and thank you so much for the follow. Hey, been meaning to catch you live? Ah, well, I'm glad you finally caught one. Thanks for joining the stream. I was just going apeshit because the Kamala Harris campaign has decided to take advice from Hillary Clinton, which is, well, the only way it makes sense is if your objective is to lose the election, and you know, so that makes me frustrated. Ay, ay, ay. In fact, in the UK, to go back to refer to, like, we're doing a bit of comparative politics, international relations here. To compare the inefficacy, or to make one last argument about the inefficacy of centrist political campaigning and the degree to which it is reliable at losing elections, I'll refer again back to the UK when Keir Starmer's Labour had that election against the Conservatives recently. Hillary Clinton, who the fuck still cares what she has to say? Well, apparently the Democratic Party cares, because just unsolicited, the Kamala Harris campaign has been taking her advice on how to win the election. I shit you not, the Kamala Harris campaign, which came into this with a record-breaking amount of energy off the back of pro-union and like pro-abortion, pro-queer messaging, is taking advice on how to win against Donald Trump from the only person who has ever lost to Donald Trump. I'm in the UK, I could probably give some perspective to this. Yeah, well, what I'm referring to is like what I know, right? What I know is that Keir Starmer, is at the head of the Labour Party, has been directing the party to abandon a lot of its left-wing promises, turning it into a much more center-aligned party. I've been following, actually, the news on this from some British pollsters who do polling as well as news coverage, and it's very clear that the Labour Party has become actually quite similar to the Conservatives, especially in regards to austerity economics. You know, they're unwilling to commit to supporting certain elements of the safety net. They've even said shit as crazy as, in order to solve the affordable housing crisis, we're going to make housing unaffordable. And what that strategy did, you know, people were able to see this leading up to the election, and it turned off a lot of people from supporting Labour who would have otherwise. Yeah, Starmer's very liberal, and so is Reeves. What that had the effect of doing was that Labour had a guaranteed margin of victory. You know, Labour basically was guaranteed to win that election, but they won it by a very, very low margin in terms of the popular vote. You know. And they, like, the centrist campaigning and messaging of Keir Starmer's Labour took the wind out of the Labour coalition's sails and massively fractured it. in such a way that now polls are actually the way polling and public opinion is trending in the UK. It's likely that the Labour Party is going to lose the next election to the Conservatives again. When this should have been like, with how badly the Conservatives fucked up, all Labour had to do was go to some of the old social democratic refrains of the 20th century about rebuilding the social safety net with public funds, with putting massively higher tax rates on the wealthy, on supporting unions and the right to strike, and potentially, if I might do a little bit of wish casting, maybe leaning more into the overt socialism side of things. All they had to do was some pretty, common sense welfare policy and anti-austerity politics, and they would have, like, for at least 10 to 12 years, guaranteed little to no opposition, because, like, you would be repairing the disillusionment and alienation of society with policies that directly try to address the interests of the workers and amend inequalities wherever they exist, right? But instead, they went conservative. Yeah, the way Starmer and Reeves are examples of survivorship bias because they survived the purges of all the socialists. They're what's left of the Labour Party at this point. They see some of the issues with capitalism, but it worked for them. But it worked for them, so they think if they're just a bit nicer about it, it can work for everyone. Yes, and such is the platform of liberalism. This is also one of the big failings of Kamala Harris's campaign, is that she found a line that, I don't know if she really liked it or if the Democratic consultants really liked it. I think the consultants really liked it, about an opportunity economy. Obviously a stump speech kind of nothing phrase, but even taken at its most charitable meaning, it's a stupid idea that, like, oh, everybody should have the opportunity to get ahead. That's just capitalism. Everybody already has the opportunity to get ahead, theoretically, but everybody won't. That's the problem of capitalism. It doesn't matter how much opportunity people have to get ahead if they still, like, can't live a life of dignity as a basic guarantee, the like, in the unwillingness to go the route of, like, guaranteeing a certain standard of living as opposed to guaranteeing the opportunity to, like, I don't know, do some small business shit. Yeah, they fundamentally, they still believe in capitalism and working until you're dead, or until, I guess, retirement age or whatever. Or, in the United States, maybe working until you're dead. If you've seen the discourse around Social Security and retirement here. It just, the Labour Party could have basically had it all. And they actively squandered it by running a centrist neoliberal, like, austerity platform, an anti-trans platform, an anti-migrant platform, a platform that was so blatantly out of lockstep with the British public that now you're starting to see a lot of the more labor, like, social democratic and left-leaning Labour supporters reconsider voting for the Labour Party and start to be more vocally supportive of the Greens, And this is in Britain, where they actually have a real Green Party, as opposed to the United States, where the Green Party is a Russian psyop. One mushroom. That's decent. I could probably just use it up here again. I'll take this. One mushroom. I don't know if that's going to be good enough. I'll use it at the next box. Ow. Appeasement will never work? Yeah, it won't. You throw the dog a bone before you know it'll try and be eating the whole carcass. Yep. Yeah, it's very easy. I think it like, it does speak a little bit to the sort of end state of liberal parties, that they're always going to sort of capitulate to the business interests more so than anything. The Democrats, I saw some shades of this even starting back at the DNC, where they were trying to have their cake and eat it too by messaging in ways that are pro-union, but also trying to do the whole business as usual, we support small businesses kind of shtick. In that battle, even as early as Adam Smith, before capitalism was even the undisputed ideological order of the day, everybody knew that the business interest would win out, because it is easier for the businesses to form associations to advocate for their own interests than it is for the workers, a much more disparate and disempowered group, to form associations to advocate for their interests, And when when you're faced with a crossroads where like business interests have been hollowing out a country, and workers' interests have had a revival in trying to rebuild it, trying to still placate the business interests will never work. It's stuff like this that makes me actually doubtful of whether or not the Democratic Party is really a serious political party. I mentioned this before, and obviously this should be taken all with the context behind it, that like obviously I'm going to still vote for them, because they could just be like running a pet rock and I would still vote for that over Trump. But like the Democratic Party, very frequently, whenever it comes to doing something good, especially, they act like they're an NGO that's not in charge of the most powerful government in the history of the world. They act like whenever they're faced with the challenge of, oh, what if we did something good? They always act like they have so much less power than they actually have. And it's very frustrating, because I know that they have, more power than they act like they do. And I think they know it too. They just, at the core of it, their ideological sort of predilections lead them to not really want to do a lot of that stuff. I think they're very hesitant and more milquetoast on the good parts of their platform, but then with the sort of increased police funding, kind of halfway austerity, a lot of the means testing crap, and in a lot of the ways where they're similar to Republicans, they just sort of view that as like, oh, well, of course, we would do this. Why not? I need somebody? No. So yeah, going back to my initial statement on this, again, this isn't going to be a segment. I'll figure something to make a segment out of at the beginning of next week. Centrism as a electoral campaign strategy was dead on arrival when it was tried with the Clinton administration 30 years ago. It led to a string of Democratic defeats in the federal government in the United States, and continues to be a dead strategy today. And to my mind, it is confounding in many ways why the Democrats still elect to run as centrist when everybody, including them, have seen the kind of longer term consequences it has for maintaining power. And ultimately, I think the only way I can explain that is, it might be a bit hyperbolic to say Democrats lose on purpose. They do still pick the only strategy that can make them lose. But I think that's just from a perspective of them being okay with losing. Because for them, the sort of push-pull where they only ever advocate for like moderate centrist drivel is, they're just okay with that. And I don't think they really see how things could ever change. And that's why, like, even in stages like this, when the general election is coming up, we should be really, really critical of the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris. I think a lot of the time they just don't comprehend what the electorate actually want. That's definitely true. Yeah, I think part of it is being really, really obtuse to the demands of the American electorate. In 2016, the electorate wanted change. Clinton didn't offer that, but Trump did. Yes, and I think that leads into one of the most important things that Democrats have refused to pick up on that Trump actually did, which is populism. We live in a socioeconomic climate of extreme disaffection and alienation. People don't believe in the future anymore. And how can you blame them when the prospect of living in America is go to work, come home, go to work, come home, go to work. You basically, like, work consumes your whole life and you work until you die. Like, what kind of life is that? Of course, people are going to become very disaffected and you know, dissatisfied and angry with the system. But because Democrats are liberals and liberalism represents the system, liberal capitalism, they will never be willing to lean into the populism that will, number one, get them votes, and number two, from a left-leaning populist perspective, actually have a chance at addressing the inequalities of society, and will, like, that would improve people's lives, you know? Yeah, they keep offering business as usual and then gawk stupidly when people vote for the far right that promises to fix everything. You know, there are, like I said, a lot of the median voter types that are like voting for Trump have admitted, like, this is a lesser evils game. I'm just acknowledging Republicans as the lesser evil because they're willing to, like, say something drastic that will change society, basically. And I'm not saying that the, like, people who are Trump supporters are entirely reachable, but what I am saying is that there are a lot of really disaffected people who might not be super interested in politics because they don't see much point, that are reachable. You know, the undecided independents. The Democrats are trying to be more right wing, but still institutionalist, which is a recipe for disaster in order to reach those people. When what you got to do is you got to go with the populism, and you know, the populist left, the populism that is present on the left wing of the political spectrum is socialism. You know, that is the way in which you are critical of the powers that created this you know, crisis of economic austerity and misery in the first place. And you have to appeal to that. You have to make emotional appeals to and from that place in order to win the election, if your objective is to win the election. Not sure about nowadays with how cultified MAGA became. For sure, people would have been more reachable in 2016 than now if they're in the Trump cult. But that's where you can kind of capitalize on the GOP losing voters to the couch, as it were. You know, Trump doesn't quite resonate with his base as strongly as he used to. There might not, you know, it's very rare that you get somebody that fully defects from one side to the other. But it is possible for you to sow enough doubt in Trump's vision for America that you convince them not to vote. And as we saw actually from the 2022 elections, there is a lot of room for Democrats to talk about queer issues and gay rights and that sort of stuff. The only part of that they've been willing to hammer in on is abortion, and even then from a very socially conservative perspective. But a lot of people, you know, we've seen that whenever Republicans ran on being overtly socially reactionary, they lost. And now there are Republicans still running on that. That should be a glowing opportunity for any Democrat to be like, hey, let's run on, like, talking about how insane this guy is for caring about, like, trans girls in high school sports, you know? For me, the issue isn't so much Trump winning outright. That seems unlikely. However, it could be so marginally that it takes one or two Republican states to unilaterally reject the results. Yeah. And certify Trump. Oops, he's the president now. Yeah, that's true. That's what I meant. You know, when I say that the Republicans don't have any chance of winning that doesn't involve cheating, that's what I mean by cheating. Is that the Republicans, without a doubt, are going to try, and actually have been trying to do, like, fake elector schemes and stuff like that. It seems that for the time being, there are some states where they've actually, their efforts have been abated. But all of what I've said, all the critiques that I've offered to the Democratic Party about campaigning are on the assumption that we're going to win this election legitimately, us being not fascists, and that the Republicans don't get away with cheating. There's still the sort of threat of cheating from the Republican side that the Democrats and ultimately the left at large has to contend with, because they've demonstrated such a open contempt for the concept of elections where there's the possibility that they lose. You know? And in order to deal with that, I think that pretty drastic measures would be required. I think this is the part where you start like mass arresting Republicans that had anything to do with the events of January 6th, and you start mass arresting Republican officials that are like overtly planning to like throw out the results of elections at the state level, indicating like, oh, there might be some interference, we won't accept any cheating from the Democratic side. Pepe posting like that, go straight to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Like, it's one of those things where there is no law against overthrowing democracy that none that Democrats are willing to enforce, and that's part of what enables Republicans to get away with this stuff. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff in the Constitution, even if there's like not necessarily anything that states it outright. There's a like overwhelming litany of stuff in the Constitution that you could interpret a number of ways to be like, yeah, trying to throw out the results of an election so that your guy can win is bad actually, and you're going to jail for it. I wouldn't know what the Constitution is as vague as the Bible, so it can say anything you want it to. Yeah, I mean, same here. I would probably refer to the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment. After the Civil War in the United States, because a lot of the Confederate governments were the state governments in the United States, they were elected to office on an insurrectionist platform. There was a part of the Constitution that was written to explicitly forbid said activities. Believe it or not, we have actually a pretty close analog that explicitly prohibits what Republicans are doing right now. All the language of national divorce and the cheating and oh, we're going to have a national divorce if we don't blah, blah, blah. The insurrection clause, I believe, of the 14th Amendment says that like nobody who has engaged in insurrection or demonstrates insurrectionary intent is allowed to hold public office. It's like written right there, but Democrats haven't really been willing to use it because that would be it would be too hard and it would upset the current state of things too much. Like a lot of liberalism, the sort of brainworm parts of liberalism are really just characterized by a lack of political imagination and a lack of willingness to be active political operatives. Democracy can only be maintained when you are willing to maintain it. Also, Grouchy Ermine 59, welcome to chat. Always glad to see new faces here. Yeah, lack of will to cause a fuss. Very common here. Yeah. In the UK, things are actually like the civility politics in the UK, believe it or not, that kind of civility politics runs deep enough that I think that the democratic institutions in the UK are not as actively under threat because the right wing in the UK is also to a pretty significant degree, at least for the time being, relatively unwilling to make such a fuss at least in a way that would institutionally upset like the natural progression of like, oh, you have an election, such and such party wins such and such number of seats and whatever, right? Whereas in the United States, the Democrats are still clinging to that mentality when the Republicans are very openly willing to just disregard the sort of legal norms and institutions that are democratic in nature. Yeah, like it's very difficult to imagine the Tories committing a coup d'etat in the UK. I just don't think the groundwork has really been laid for that. But, in the United States, the Republicans already attempted a coup, and they have learned from that coup attempt that the Democrats are not going to stop them if they do it again. So hard to join your lobby. I've been joining random low player lobbies, but can't seem to find you. I mean, I think that this lobby's like just about full. That might be why. I thought I saw something. I'm gonna save this mushroom if I can. Yeah, Trump is literally on record saying he wants to, or no, Trump, not Trump. Who is it? Nigel Farage? On record saying he wants the power to deport anyone he wants at will. At this point, leaving in the EHCR is a guarantee for him. EHCR is like Greater European like Economic Bloc or something, right? Yeah, EHCR is the next would be the next Brexit. Right-wing commentators are priming the electorate for an ECHR, excuse me, referendum. Oh well, that you know, I'm sure that can't possibly go wrong in any way, shape, or form. Certainly, no negative economic consequences have ever happened from Britain becoming more isolationist from the rest of Europe. Oh, yeah. European Court of Human Rights. Yeah. Vote against human rights, guys. Trust me. Nothing bad will happen as a result of this. You know, in Britain, that's actually a necessary step for them to have. In the United States, it isn't, because we're already not a signatory of most human rights declarations and conventions. Are you playing global? I'm playing... I think so. I mean, there are some green line people in my room, which means I'm playing with people both from America and Europe. You should... Okay. If you join when you see the race starting on my screen, that's when you can get into the room, I think. So if you wait for Lakitu to start counting down, and then you try to find a worldwide, it'll put you in this room. Farage was making some shit up about illegal immigrants driving Ferraris, and he let the mask slip a bit when he said, while they're under due process, we can't deport them. I wonder what his intentions could be with the... Yeah. That's some shit, dude. Yeah, he just wants the power to deport people at his discretion, at his pleasure. You know, in the United States, I'm sure you've heard, most people with any degree of political awareness have an awareness of American politics. Trump has been saying, like straight up, his platform is just, I'm gonna deport millions and millions of people. Which I believe he actually does have the authority to do as president. I'm not 100% sure, but like, I think him through some department of like immigration, it's like the INS or something. I'm in your lobby now? Yeah, there you go. See, I learned the tricks of the trade to Mario Kart quite a long time ago. His rhetoric on migration is indistinguishable from Nazi Germany at this point. I don't make that comparison lightly. Yeah, and you know, I think it's good that we should be like able to recognize that now, because you know, Nazi Germany, one of the key sticking points of their political campaigning, their political messaging, was expelling migrants, you know, and as well as expelling the Jews. Before they built the death camps for Jews and for like the Roma and for queer people, their platform was to expel them all from Germany. That was what they wanted before they started to build those death camps. Conflating immigrants with illegal migration, illegal aliens, my bad. That's literally just what the Nazis called Jews. Yeah, and see, the thing, there's kind of a secret, there's a secret key to understanding the immigration discourse, and that is that in the nation-state form, all immigrants are treated as illegal. There's no such thing as a legal immigrant. Like if you see how the asylum-seeking process goes, and how basically the policing authorities treat legal migrants as well as asylum seekers, you'll see very quickly there's very little difference between how an asylum seeker is treated trying to flee from violence, say in the Middle East or something like that, and how a migrant that might not have their papers is treated coming up from like North Africa or whatever, right? The only reason they specify illegal is it's like a word game, to try to open people up to their arguments, if that makes sense, right? Like when they say illegal immigrants, I'm the one with no name. Ah, cool. When they say illegal immigrants, they're referring to all immigrants. Yeah, dehumanization. That's why, I mean, that's why they say illegal aliens. uh, which is kind of goofy, I'm not gonna lie. You know, illegal aliens is such a goofy term that, like, dog, how am I expected to take you seriously when you're calling people aliens? Like, oh, little green men. But, you know, I mean, I'm also not the median voter, so some people might fall for that, I don't know. 3 people in Wild Wing. Oh, sick. That's pretty cool. Oops. We're gonna do this. Yeah, nice and easy. Protection from the red shell. Oh yeah, there's one of them right behind me. Wild Wing individual. Oh no, I kind of like froze in the face of that fake item box. I didn't know it was so blatantly in the middle of the road that I didn't know whether to go to the right of it or to the left of it, and I just kind of drove straight into it. Like how over the years people gradually stop using Funky Bike and Daisy Bike. Generally in any given room you see several different characters now. Yeah, and I think it's because people have kind of realized something that I realized in Mario Kart Wii Wi-Fi a long time ago, which is that the character vehicle combo, like the minute differences that you're going to get between like Daisy Mach Bike and say Peach Mach Bike or Luigi or Mario Mach Bike are not going to matter in your average worldwide, right? Like picking the maximalization of stats on the margins is not going to, like, that matters in time trial mode. It doesn't matter very much in a worldwide where there's a lot of items flying around and anything goes and stuff like that. You know, the gains that you're going to see are going to be marginal at best, and it's going to be easily outweighed by the kind of items that you're getting and the, like, where you're deciding to use them, what shortcuts you're taking. And so I think people have realized just to play what character vehicle combos they like the most. Yeah. Now, of course, you still see a lot of people on Funky Kong Bowser Bike, because to be quite frank, it's a pretty cool character vehicle combo. You know, Funky looks great. His design is pretty cool. Finished second. Nice. Wild Wing enjoyers eating good right now. Yeah, you could be the best player on in the world with Funky and Bowser Bike, and you'll still lose to Birdo Wildwing if you get like blue shelled, red shelled, dick sucked, ass eaten out, balls tugged on one by one, get put in the device and that shit. Due to lag while watching your stream playing at the same time, Dolphin slowed down and made me second. Okay. Oh, is this cross-console? That's actually crazy. I'm on my Wii U right now. You can't... It's hard to tell, maybe, but I'm not playing this on Dolphin Emulator. This is on, like, console. I didn't know this had cross-console compatibility. That is actually sick. Anywho. That fulfills my socialist quota for getting mad at liberals and explaining how, you know, my frustration with them revolves around them feeding into the far right. I've never actually played Retro Rewind. It's a good custom track pack. It's, you know, true to the name, it's only custom tracks from other Mario Kart games. So it, like, avoids some of the problems of CTGP, where CTGP has a lot of really, like, new player unfriendly tracks that mostly revolve around technical execution tests and like difficult shortcuts and stuff, where like there's very much a sort of experiential bias there. Retro Rewind, this is a much more noob friendly custom track pack, I would say. You know? Because people are probably going to recognize, like, oh, this is from this other Mario Kart game. And even if they don't necessarily know what game it's from, or if they don't recognize it, it's a Nintendo design from another Mario Kart game. So it's not going to be that hard to pick up on as you're racing it, and it's not going to be, there's not going to be such a high demand for skill when racing the track that, like, if you know the track, you win automatically. If you don't, you lose automatically, you know? Delightfully devilish, Seymour. Somehow got a blue shell in second. I love the item roulette in this game. I can never get used to CTGP, just play vanilla tracks. Yeah, you know what's funny? CTGP used to have less of this problem back in the day when the tracks were more broken. You know, when it was just Peaks and the other really insane tracks, everybody would be struggling, you know? And then there was actually, believe it or not, in the mid 2010s, like before COVID, at some point, there was a brief period of time where CTGP really looked like it was improving. There were some shorter tracks getting introduced, more user-friendly, you know, beginner-friendly tracks getting introduced to the pack. And the sort of average difficulty just, like, started to decrease a lot, you know? And it started to feel like, wow, this might be the distribution for everybody. But then we just sort of now have the 2020's sort of updated version of the problems it used to have, where it was very unfriendly to new players. Except this time, tracks are well designed enough that experienced players can just, you know, run away with it. I was around at that point, definitely getting better. Not that I played it much, but still. Yeah, it should be, I think, you know, with CTGP, my position is that it should be relatively easy to pick up, even if you're not an expert, you know? And that's a hard bar to clear, for sure. I know that CTGP is the distribution pack that competitive players really like, so it's probably, because of how disproportionately active and vocal competitive players are in driving what is or isn't included in CTGP, it's probably never going to change. But if it were to change, that would need to be what happens. Leave after this race to eat dinner with my parents to save food is getting ready. All right, I mean, yeah, sure. You don't got to justify when you're gonna leave. Like, I'm not a teacher. This isn't school. Even though I sometimes sound like I'm a teacher. You know? Oops. But that, you know, that kind of opens me up to talk about another thing, a more media related thing, still politically relevant. But I thought it was nice to talk about, especially because I had been engaging with this media franchise a bit lately. CGGP was made by one of the most well-known hackers in the sphere. That's true. It's going to be geared to the experts with technical knowledge. Yeah, I think to some degree that's always going to be the case, I suppose. It's just CTGP had so much promise and so many new tracks. There are a lot of tracks in CTGP that even don't have the problems that the general pack does. You know, think of something like Musical Cliff. You know, except for the fireballs. I think TWD has had some bad experiences with those fireballs. I saw one of his videos about it. Or that contained that. There are some tracks in CTGP that are genuinely really good tracks. But there's an endemic pattern of those tracks actually getting removed lately. One of my favorite tracks in CTGP, I think one of the best examples of a new track was Envenom Snowstorm, right? Track was made in what, 2018, 2019, something like that. For me, it was a very new track because I started playing about 2012. It had everything that you would want in a custom track. It had some shortcuts, and knowledge was rewarded on the track, but not so much so that you were guaranteed to win over somebody that was new to the track, because it was a very easy track to understand and drive. You know, very visually appealing, very pretty, a lot of trick ramps that you could do your thing on, and just a ton of fun overall. And it got removed for a track that suffers from every single problem that CTGP as a pack suffers from. I'm distracting you, lol. And no worries, no worries. Look, you'll get the hang of the flow of chat over time. the only time when I get upset about chat distracting me is when it's clear that like they're doing it from a position of argumentation and stuff, and like not good faith. When they're not trying to enjoy the stream, I guess. What I wanted to talk about was Star Wars. I've been watching some Star Wars stuff recently. I didn't know that a third season of The Bad Batch had been released, so I watched that. I rather liked the third season of Bad Batch. I might talk about that in a bit, but right now what I'm going to talk about is there's a random thing that the Star Wars social media account posted, I think, on Twitter, which was a transgender clone trooper, which I think is pretty neat. Let's see, where was this thing? I know I posted something about it. Mostly gave up with Star Wars after Episode 9. What a bitch. What a bitch. Watched a bit of Mandalorian and gave up. That's fair. That's fair. I'm very much of the mind, like, I just don't want to talk about the sequels. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Being a Star Wars fan in 2024 is annoying as shit. Yeah, the secret sauce there is that you just never talk to anybody else who's a Star Wars fan unless they share your opinions, in which case you can talk constructively. Like, my dad and I both love Star Wars, but we're not Star Wars fans, per se, because Star Wars fans that call themselves Star Wars fans are the most unhinged people I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, there was a trans clone trooper who they gave the code name or a nickname Sister to, and I thought it was really neat. And predictably, a lot of Star Wars fans were being very Hitlerite about this. I didn't read any of their comments. I just needed to see the ratio and knew that, like, okay, people hate trans women, right? Nothing too new there, unfortunately. At least people on Twitter.com, which is, largest Nazi website on the internet. I thought that it was pretty neat, and in fact that, like, people were losing their shit over it, but I want to talk about, like, just how normal that is as a concept. Like, of course there's going to be a trans clone trooper. You've created an army of millions, potentially billions, depending on how big the galaxy is, of clones of one man, Jango Fett, and it's been clearly shown throughout the Star Wars series that they're all, despite being brothers genetically, being cloned from the same guy, they're all very different people. Sequels bad because of woke absolutely lost their shit. Well, yeah. Those people were the kinds of people. Yeah, they have individual personalities. In fact, they use that, like, really well in the last season of the Clone Wars when they like did that Order 66 scene. That made Order 66 actually really tragic to me, because now it wasn't just, oh, this religious group is getting slaughtered by the military. Now it was genuinely like, the soldiers are also the victims of this. Whatever your critiques of the Jedi Order and stuff, that can make people pretty unsympathetic to the Jedi. Certainly not to the degree of like justifying genocide or anything, but the fact that every personality or every clone had their own distinct personality, that Order 66 and those little organic inhibitor chips all swept under the rug so forcefully, and that they were forced to essentially watch their own actions with no agency, shown by how Rex acted when he was like beginning to be under the chip's control but still kind of resisting it. That went the extra mile. And when you have such like world building that's established like that, with millions, potentially billions of clones, of course there's going to be transgender clones, because gender is a form of expression. It's a form of self-expression and speech. And so every now and again you'll get a clone or two who was like obviously genetic clone of Jango Fett, assigned male at birth at cloning or whatever, but decided, you know what, this doesn't feel right. And you know, rainbow capitalism though it may be, for sure, you could say that. That'd be a correct argument to make, I suppose. It's it's just neat, and it provides another dimension to the Star Wars universe that, like, hey, they truly are just like us. And it gives another facet along which the Star Wars universe resembles our own in terms of its politics too. You know, because you have the authoritarian hand of the Empire. You have the authoritarian presence of the Empire, which swept all the individual identities of the clones under the rug in a like one like swoop of dehumanization to service a project of genocide. You know, yeah, it's just a statistical likelihood after a certain point, like the opposite of dehumanization. Yeah, which is kind of the point of telling the stories of all those clones, to sell the fact that they're not just clones. When you clone something, that's now its own animal. It's just genetically very similar. They're people. Um, yeah, TCW saved the prequels, the world of the prequels, big time. I think there are some ways in which you can go back and watch the prequels and they're made maybe a little bit better by the fact that the Clone Wars exist. Ultimately, I still don't think those movies are very good, like, at all. Um, but it definitely saves that time period of Star Wars for me. You know? Yeah, all the people saying that, you know, oh, Star Wars has gone woke. These people are all fucking separatists and Empire supporters, you know, we don't need to worry about them. They're from the fucking banking clan or some shit, I don't know. Phantom Menace is really not good. Attack of the Clones is watchable at best. Revenge of the Sith is pretty good. Revenge of the Sith is alright. Um, it's just, I think there's actually, like, for Revenge of the Sith, I feel like there's a lot of missing context, and obviously the dialogue sucks shit. Um, apart from that, it's pretty decent. Yeah, they'd be on their side on that side of things in the Star Wars universe. Definitely, like, well, Alderaan was harboring terrorists, so the Empire was justified in mulching billions. Yay. I'll do one more race as Birdo, I think, and I'll move on to another character. I mean, it would have been much better if Attack of the Clones was the first installment, second was during the Clone Wars, and then Revenge of the Sith happens when Anakin's early 30s. The trauma of watching so many of his friends die is catching up to him. Yeah, I could see that. You know, there are a lot of people, myself and my dad included, who have sort of done thought exercises of rewriting the Star Wars prequels to be better movies. And you know, for some people that means starting later. For some people that just means kind of scrapping it, but still keeping some of the general elements of it. But yeah, many people have tried their hands at prequel rewrites, and I think for at least for a good portion of them, it's clear that it comes from a place of wanting the universe to be uh, cohesive, coherent, and like, well, you know, cool. A lot of people complain about Anakin being a whiny brat all the time when that was the point of the character. Yeah, I think the dialogue didn't help there. I mean, a lot of the problems with the prequel come back to the dialogue and how forced a lot of the character relationships seemed because of how rushed it seemed like the storyline was. Like, you're telling the story of a guy's whole life. Like, even in the first Star Wars movie, Luke was already in his 20s when you start off with him. Um, I think, for me, it was kind of like the whiny brat element. I feel like I feel like they didn't lead very well from that into a very intimidating antagonist. Darth Vader is a very imposing presence, and you have to have a pretty convincing transition from whiny brat into that if that's going to be the character of Anakin Skywalker, right? And I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's hard. That's hard to do. Having Anakin be in his early 30s in the third installment would have provided a lot more context to the arc, and it would have been a lot more appreciated. Whereas in reality, we see him to go into the war as a whiny brat, barely an adult in Revenge of the Sith. Now he's arrogant and evil. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, I think I was trying to reach for something with Star Wars. I guess just that, like, with the clone trooper bit, I don't know if there was like an overarching thing I really wanted to reach for, apart from just that, like, trans people pretty normal. Of course you're gonna have that. Oh, in comparison to the Bad Batch. In the Bad Batch, they explore the concept of there being female clones too. Which, I mean, yeah, male clones, female clones, it's possible that, yeah, we're off topic. It's fine, it's fine. Um, like, with a lot of genetic variations, with different personalities or whatever, you're going to get some genetic variations that are large enough to change something visibly, too. Eye color, hair color, or even gender, hormones, whatever. Or sex assigned at birth or at clonage. Um, and so in the Bad Batch, you have the male clones that we're all used to, and then you have some female clones, too. Uh, and so then I think that actually did a lot of the legwork too, to be like, yeah, so there's male clones, there's female clones, and all of them have distinct personalities. You see that reflected in the show, even with as few female clones as you see that are like central characters. So then it's not really a very big leap to say, oh, okay, right, trans clone, that makes sense, because it's just another form of that kind of expression of personality. Although a lot of people, I must say, even though I know I'm making like very pretty simple, correct arguments about this, if there's anybody who's on the sort of anti-trans hate train is not going to be convinced by those, because like their opposition to transness is just grounded in some sort of ick factor, as if trans people haven't existed for literally thousands of years in the historical record. And I know that, like, this is an argument from the normalcy of trans people, which, I mean, we should be okay with something not necessarily being 100% normal or that we're used to seeing, right? It's just it's kind of weird. It's kind of a weirdness that you can only grasp if you're not a weird creep who's, like, policing people's sense of identity and expression, right? Like, if that's not a thing that you routinely do. Wasn't there a Roman emperor that was probably trans? Yes, there was. In fact, it goes even further back than that. In the Bronze Age, in the days of the Babylonian Empire, the religion that they practiced, which I be hard pressed to remember the name of because it's been a while since I last learned about this topic. Their religion, with the multi-tiered ziggurats, revolved a lot around sex and procreation, fertility, and just sexual acts in general, right? And the a lot of the priests were trans women. Uh, the like trans women were not only a normal part of society, but they were actually a very integral part of a religious structure in society. You know, which could get into some of the critiques I have of institutionalized religion, but just to say that, like, trans people are nothing new. Pretty normal thing. I think a lot of the trans hate comes from people who believe there's some sort of greater hierarchy to life. Trans people in their mind fall out of that, so they violate the natural order or some shit. Real Cryoraptor, you have almost exactly nailed the psychological reason why reactionaries and conservatives hate trans people. Yeah, they not it's not some of them. I'm going to reveal to you the great secret. I don't know why I'm phrasing everything in conspiratorial terms. It's not just some of them. That is the entire point of anti-trans hatred. It's sexual insecurity. There is a patriarchal world order, social order, that trans people fall outside of. They don't fit into it in a very convenient way, because the idealized position is that of cis motherhood, which is subservience to the authoritarian family structure, or being the head of that authoritarian family structure, being a man, the head of the pater familias, the fatherly family model, right? Trans people don't fit neatly into that. They're women who cannot be easily shoved into the roles of cis motherhood because they can't give birth. At least most of them can't. And they have transcended the bounds of a male gender identity. Like for a lot of people, trans women represent a rejection of masculinity, not only as like, oh, I was a woman assigned at birth, because you were assigned your gender identity at birth, but as somebody who had experience firsthand with a masculine identity and chose to abandon it. That is a completely foreign concept to reactionaries and conservatives, because in the conservative patriarchal worldview, the end-all be-all of life is a sexually controlling masculine figure. The father. That is the mass psychology of fascism. That is why the hatred of trans people exists. All hatred of trans people, which most often comes in the form of trans women, is directed from a place of profound sexual insecurity, because that is a threat to an authoritarian sexual worldview. Trans people inherently represent a threat to a patriarchal system because of how people came to be trans. It like in the way of like rejecting a supposedly divinely ordained role preset for them. A role of dominance. That's why trans men are sometimes not as much the subject of this ire, because trans men, it could be sort of rationalized from the conservative worldview, simply want to be on top of the hierarchy, right? Or want to occupy the position that conservatives view as on top of the hierarchy. Yeah, the vast majority of trans hate is against trans women, people who were assigned male at birth and then transitioned to be a woman. And that's why, because it is completely unfathomable to the conservative that somebody would like forsake masculinity as a concept, that they would voluntarily become a woman. Yeah. But yeah, as you might or might not be able to tell, I'm reading The Mass Psychology of Fascism right now, and they have a lot to say about patriarchal society. And funnily enough, a lot of the ways in which the Nazis were able to come to power is off of the weaponization of patriarchal norms and institutions. That was a lot of the selling points of their worldview. Yeah, to them, a woman is inferior, so why would any man want to become a woman? Exactly. It would make sense the other way around, where, oh, a woman might want to be a man. In fact, fun story is, my grandmother was very active in politics when she was alive, when she was younger. And there were some men in Morocco who actually gave her the title of, honorary man. Stella, you are an honorary man. You know, you're a man to me. And that's like a title of honor. A lot of people would be surprised by how many rich Americans financially supported Hitler. Henry Ford was one of his biggest, full stop. Oh yeah, America was in many ways was complicit in the Holocaust and in the ideological rise to power of the Nazis. There was a very prominent Nazi movement in America. Hitler got a lot of his eugenicist ideas from America. Henry Ford, very big supporter of Nazi Germany, had close ties with some unsavory individuals as well. And there were Jewish refugees that tried to come to America, tried to flee from Germany before the Holocaust proper had happened, and America rejected them. Same with the UK. People were quite surprised that Anglosphere didn't side with the Nazis. Yeah, you know, and I think the reason for that is largely proceduralist and legalistic, right? The UK joined the war against Germany because they were part of the League of Nations and had a legal obligation to protect Poland when they were invaded by Germany. Their geopolitical interests were at odds. The United States was attacked by Japan, one of the Axis powers. And in fact, we were aligned closely with Britain up to that point. So the reason that Britain went into that war against the Nazis is because they were legally obligated to. The reason the United States went into that war is because the United Kingdom was fighting that war against the Nazis, and because an ally of the Nazis, Imperial Japan, did a military attack on the United States. I've said this in another one of my segments, or another one of my videos, there was not as big an ideological divide between the liberal democracies of the West and Hitler's Germany. Not as big as people would think. Daily Mail was writing shit like illegal Jewish aliens trying to seek refuge in the UK and shit. Oh, jeez. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know the Nazi sympathies. Yeah, they ran pretty deep in the Anglosphere, as you refer to it there. Oh, sorry, Waluigi. Holy shit, I'm getting bumped. Daily fail. Many such cases. Famously backed Hitler? Interesting. It kind of reminds me of how a lot of conservative outlets now are not very... they are, relatively speaking, pretty pro-Putin. I'm just going to use this here. Yeah, until they went to war with him. I need to use this. Okay. How am I in fourth all of a sudden? Third somehow? Yeah. Totally agree that there wasn't a huge difference. The Allies largely went to war with the Nazis because they were competitors, not because of any moral reason. Yeah, that's one of the big myths that's been sold about World War II, is that it was a sort of moral, a war fought on moralistic grounds, which it really wasn't. Yeah, look how racist Churchill was towards the Indians, how the United States treated the Japanese and Jews in the lead up to the war as well as during the war. A lot of the opposition to Nazi ideology only grew as an afterthought, as a product of wartime opposition, you know? The disdain towards Nazi ideology and Nazism in the United States, even though it is now fading away, whatever's left of it is rooted in those old wartime sympathies, you know? And it's a very uncomfortable thing to acknowledge, but that's all that stands in the way of the United States and like full-blown Nazi takeover, basically. Because, you know, liberals not very keen on providing a much more vocal and active critical ideological opposition to that. Churchill's one of the very first proponents of white replacement bullshit. Yeah, I mean, you know, conservatives and Nazis frequently worked together in the UK, in Germany, in Austria. that kind of stuff. Yay! On my me character. This track is actually is more difficult than I used to think it is. It was, excuse me. Ooh, a mushroom. One thing I will say though. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, that's exactly why I'm letting this guy stay in first. That's right, baby. Take those blue shells. Or I guess just that one blue shell for the time being. I think the GOP's brand of far-right authoritarianism is most similar to phalangism. Really? Oh, maybe, possibly. I'm not too well versed on the different types of fascist ideology. For me, obviously, the GOP's brand of the far right is very similar to Nazism. Not the least of which because they've incorporated several professed Nazis into their ranks. So shares a lot of the religious bullshit with them. Yeah, I have no doubt that there are a lot of similarities between many different types of fascist movements. And ultimately, I don't think it makes that large of a difference. That's possible, yeah. For me, the most effective comparison is to the Nazis because that's like one of the most ubiquitously recognizable ones. Oh, did I not use that soon enough? Dang. Oh, wild. But the Nazis, actually, I've been reading in the mass psychology of fascism, the Nazis had a distinctly religious bend to them outside of power as well. You know, the Nazis were very keen on trying to earn support in the churches. Yeah, of course, a fascist is a fascist. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know. To me, they seem most similar to the phalanges. Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's interesting. They've definitely, you know, the GOP has actually remained more institutionalist than a lot of, than the Nazis were. I think the Nazis were actually a bit less institutionalist than the GOP. So it's possible that there is probably more resemblance along that line. Yeah, they tried to rebrand Christianity with their own kind of faith. Something that the GOP is doing as well. They've tried to make the Christian aesthetic in service of the right, the far right movement. But one thing that's interesting about the Nazis is that they called themselves, they didn't call themselves the Nazis. You know, that only started, I think, after the war, or during the war even. They called themselves National Socialists. They focused very heavily on national allegiances and populism that was to be directed along like national lines, but supposed to like resonate with people that were not very wealthy, right? In fact, the author Wilhelm Reich drew the comparison in the book, in the Mass Psychology of Fascism, that fundamentally the German imperialism of World War One and the Nazism leading up to or in the Weimar Republic are similar in a lot of ways. But one of the ways that they're different is that the middle class in Imperial Germany was quite a bit wealthier, whereas the middle class in the Weimar Republic leading up to the Nazi takeover in the after the elections, the middle class was much poorer in the 30s than it was in the like 1890s and 1910s, right? So along those lines, the Nazis were kind of like a brand of imperialism that had to contend with a much less wealthy political constituency. Most parties called ex-People's Party or ex-Socialist Party are actually far right. Yeah, that's kind of true. You know, that can definitely be the case. Um, you know, they definitely they engage in those word games a lot. Yeah, the Nazi Party, the full name of the Nazi Party was the National Socialist German Workers' Party. You know, refer back to the meme where Hitler is going to the rich Germans with the National German Party, and the words socialist and worker are really small. And then he goes to the workers with the Socialist Workers' Party, and then the words national and German are really small. You know? Yeah, small time Bavarian conservatives. Um, you know, it's funny. There was a party in there was a political party in Ukraine when the war broke out that actually got banned. That was a Nazbol party, but that by all aesthetics had the like makings of a social democratic party. In fact, it was called like the Ukrainian Social Democratic Party or Social Democratic People's Party or something. But it was a Nazbol party. You know, it had like the rose and I think the hammer and sickle in red on a blue background, something that would be kind of characteristic of a 20th century like social democracy, social democratic party or whatever. But then, you know, most of their politics revolves around being pro-Russia. Um, I struggle to think of a lot of People's Party or Socialist Party kind of things nowadays that are far right. I guess the Czech Social Democratic Party. Yeah, tapping into that tanky Russia support. Certainly, most political parties that are professedly socialist or communist in Russia are really just far right and favor Russian geopolitical interests. The Venezuelan Socialist Party, it's a little bit actually like INGSOC in a couple different ways, you know. Very difficult for me to ascertain what that party believes in. It's very strange because by all markers, they're like a progressive but very, very authoritarian party. They're like, oh yeah, you know, we support queer people and indigenous people and we believe racism is bad. But also they're all like doing the tanky-esque Western conspiracy shit about how free and fair elections are capitalist degeneracy or something. Yeah, they literally, like, tankies would defend far-right dictatorships because they used to be part of the USSR, who were, like, barely socialist, if at all. Very strange stuff. I think it's just part of a tendency where people want to believe that better things are possible. But, you know, this is a way in which tankies are very similar to liberals, is a lack of political imagination. For them, it has to be that the better possible thing has to have already existed at some point. You know, it's fully possible to acknowledge that, yes, the Soviet Union was a product of socialist movements, whether or not it was actually socialist. And in the name of socialism, it did a lot of fucking horrible things. But I still believe that socialism is the best set of political ideas to transcend capitalism. It's a flawed good versus evil mindset, and I think for some tankies, yeah, the West is evil, so Russia must be good kind of logic, and you know, they've gotten half of the way there. The West is evil, but in assuming that anything that isn't the West is good, they've kind of failed to understand why the West is evil, or what makes it evil. You know? The West is evil because it does evil things in pursuit of geopolitical interests. Fundamentally no different from what every country in the East does. Their evil is simply tempered by the fact that there's a bigger bully on the playground, that being the West. If there was no bigger bully on the playground, then it would just be the same as it ever was, just with somebody else. And that's why, you know, it's not enough to do the whole campism shtick or the you know, the usual tanky shtick. You have to fundamentally change the way that the global order is organized. You know? Yeah, you know, if the US was gone, China would just take the US's place. I'm using this here. Please get me around this corner. It got me all the way to the finish line. Okay, cool. I'm gonna mention. I was thinking about what media I was going to, what kind of stuff I've been watching. Oh yeah, I finished watching Dungeon Meshi recently. Um, I like that show. I actually think that, oh no, I hit randomized combo by accident. Give me something good. Fuck. This was not on purpose. Dungeon Meshi actually had a little bit higher stakes than I... Thank you. Good luck. I will need it. Dungeon Meshi had a little bit higher stakes than I was comfortable with, you know? I am invested in it because Farin is cute. She's actually... I ain't gonna lie. She's actually pretty hot as that fucking giant beast or whatever. I guess that's kind of out of context spoilers or whatever. Haven't seen it. If you're gonna see it, then you know, consider this maybe a spoiler warning. I don't know. I'll try to keep it relatively spoiler free. It's, you know, the premise of the show is they're going through the dungeon and they're killing monsters and they're eating them, right? And stuff happens along the way, but the stakes get a little bit too elevated for my taste for the concept of the show. You know, I very much, I guess I'm in kind of a slice of life mindset right now. A lot of anime that I really have enjoyed is slice of life stuff, like Nichijo Hozuki no Doritetsu, and like, I don't know, fucking, there's some comedy anime as well. Saiki no Kusonan? The one about that psychic kid. And also not big on anime. That's fine. But yeah, you know, Dungeon Meshi had the makings of all that, and I think it had a lot of charm too. But it was, you know, it was a little bit higher stakes than I usually like in the anime that I watch. Because anime, I usually kind of want to be sort of like comfort media. In a way. I mean, I can engage with it critically, like you know... Part of the reason I actually enjoyed, what was it, Kobayashi no Dragon Maid, was because there was stuff that I found disagreeable about it. You know, like, there's a very deep-running, like, anti-union culture in Japan. I somehow got a mid-spot. Yeah, you don't want it to be overly realistic or anxiety-inducing, right? And that in a sort of way that's like typical of a serialized story format. I also don't really like the multi-season serialized stories. I get burned out. I just, that's not my favorite form of content to engage with. You know, which is why a lot of times when there's a show or series I really like to watch, I tend to wait until all the episodes of the season are out. I did that with Invincible and with My Adventures with Superman. Last race, I'm going to go back to the Miyamaki bike. Not doing that again. Yeah, they'll just start rotting if they last 69 seasons. Looking at you, fucking Naruto and like, I don't know. Bleach. There are a couple anime that just run so fucking long. And some of my favorite anime are just the 2 to 3 season ones. You know? Like, Hozuki no Retetsu is only 2 seasons with a total of 26 episodes, and it's a low-stakes slice-of-life show that has a lot of interesting stuff about Japanese demon culture, you know? Japanese demon culture, Japanese office culture, too, and ethnic tensions between Japan and China and Korea as they exist today. It was interesting in the ways that I think were fitting of a slice of life, and the stakes never really got all that high. Yeah, Death Note is one of the most popular anime ever, and it's 2 seasons. Full Metal Alchemist, also Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, higher stakes, a little bit longer than I'm used to, but ultimately it's, what, 69 nice episodes? which is not super long, you know? That's like the longest I'm really comfortable with going, you know? First was the best, lol. I have no doubt that that's the case. There's a real tendency of media that, like, sometimes there are a lot of things that can happen that can sort of lead to a slight, even if it's just slight, a little bit of a degradation of quality as seasons go on, which is why the sort of phrase return to form exists. Sometimes the form can get a little bit lost, but, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I was thinking of what I want to watch now that I finished Dungeon Meshi. And I know at some point I actually want to revisit Hozuki no Reitetsu because I love that show so much. There are some TV shows that are literally on the 30-something season. It's like, how are you still writing this? Yeah, I legit, I don't know how you can still write that stuff and still have people be invested in that stuff after it's clear that, like, okay, there's just no end to this. You know, like, how can you be invested in that? As like a format of storytelling when there is no... like, there has to be an end to a story, right? Otherwise, it's just, like, kind of mind-numbing. Although, I guess maybe some people are into that. I don't know. This will be the last race, I'm pretty sure. No. Back up, give me that boost panel. Yes. Oh, I got the low trick. Holy shit, I salvaged that third place so hard. I'm clipping that. The only way to do it is have the universe itself be long-lived and for entirely new casts every decade or so, but it has to be done in a really particular way. Yeah, I think I agree with that. You know, that's part of what I think has given Star Wars such longevity, is that each trilogy is in a completely different time period, and each series can be in a potentially very different setting, right? Like, you know, I'm not going to talk about the sequels too much, but you have these three distinct eras, and then with the Clone Wars, this happens in a similar time, but very different place than the Star Wars prequels. Same with, like, the Bad Batch. Happens between the prequels and the original trilogy. Same thing with Rogue One, right before the original trilogy. Almost completely different cast of main faces. And like, it gives life to the world. It can make the world feel that much more appealing when you're not stuck with the same people. When you're stuck with the same people every time, it can make things feel small. Yeah, entirely different stories can be told. There is such a wide breadth of stories that is told just in Star Wars, where for Mandalorian, it is a true Western, you know, very Western kind of show that happens just after the downfall of the Empire and the rise of the New Republic, ill-fated though it may be. And then you go back several years, and you have, you know, chronologically, you have Andor, which is a very political series about the ideological mixture that is the rebellion, and how it covertly opposes the Empire, and how the Empire does and doesn't have a hold on the galaxy. You know? Very different settings and stories in the same world. My friend keeps telling me to watch Andor. I think if you're interested in a show, it's 1 season long. It is incredibly compelling. And I think for the leftist politics that we've talked about here, I think you would really enjoy it. Because it is one of the most intelligent pieces of media that Star Wars has produced. I would put it, the most similar thing that I could attach it to is probably Rogue One, because, well, Andor. But I don't want to spoil it too much, because I think there's a lot of, there's a lot to be found in that show. Anyways, that does it for the stream this time. This has been a nice, chill stream. I've been talking a lot, but that's okay. That's what I signed up for, and I have thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. Who is live right now? Nobody particularly. I don't think I'm going to raid anybody today. Or remember to watch it one day. Yeah, someday. I would recommend it, you know. I'm not one of those people that will tell you to do it with any kind of urgency. You know, you do it if you feel like it. If not, then not. I'll see you guys next time, whenever that may be. I'm trying to be a little bit more casual about my stream schedule, so I have more consistent motivation when I do stream. Uh, but yeah, see you next time, and thank you for watching.